fast forward to our time, you tell the unborn baby, you got to die. Why? I tell you why. Because your mom needs to continue to do after work drinks and Peloton. Do you know how much Peloton subscription costs?
Nicholas, how are you doing, man?
Very well. How are you?
Great. Thank you for making this happen, man.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So what originally caught my eye was your the stand-up set you did that earned you the title the world's best pro-life comedian.
Or the world's only pro-life comedian.
Yeah, that's like, that's the technicality I like.
Yeah, I mean, I joke about that because when you're the only one, then automatically you become the funniest one. And if someone else comes along, I'll always be the first one. Now, I need to make a clarification. It has been branded by some kind outlets or publications in the US, such as the American Mind or LifeSite News, as the only pro-life routine. So this is entirely a pro-life routine, about 15 minutes or so, because there have been other comics, even very big ones, the likes of Bill Burr or Dave Chappelle, maybe Louis C.K. And they
Did
have been
something.
exactly quoted
Yeah.
in that article by the American Mind, for example, as comics, huge comics, who have dabbled with pro-life positions, but always end up on the pro-choice, so-called pro-choice position. So the pro-life bit is a bit of a provocation before coming back to the mainstream vision or attitude. So a bit of this and a bit of that, which is absolutely fine. But what was, for example, in the American Mind, what they kindly observed was that unlike these A-listers, I am somebody who has only done a pro-life position in an entirely pro-life stand-up routine.
By the way, what sort of messed up, cynical name is it? Planned Parenthood. Because there's no planning and there's no parenthood. Yeah, I'm planning to become a parent. Okay, let's start with killing your baby. By the time you leave the clinic, there's no parenthood. It's like I am planning my visit to Australia and I start by shredding my tickets to Australia.
Spot on. Yeah, and not only that, like, and I don't want to ruin the I don't want to ruin it for anybody who hasn't seen it because I think people should just watch it. But you loop in like history, and it's very like a very sensitive part of history. Like you do a lot of things in it that are it's funny. I think even if somebody is pro-choice, they could listen to it, and they may not be swayed. Maybe they could be, but it's still funny. Like the humor is still at the front.
Yeah. Thanks for pointing that out, Kevin, and very kind, by the way. Obviously, you want to talk to and address your own crowd or your own tribe, because those are the ones who agree with you, and those are the ones who are on the same side in this so-called culture war, which is very real, as I'm sure you agree. But the best comments or the best compliments that I receive are the ones from people on YouTube, for example. This has been seen more than 1 million times now. People who come and say, yeah, I don't agree with everything you say, or I don't agree with anything you say, but I still found it funny, or I still found it thought-provoking. You still made some good points. So first of all, it has to remain comedy because it claims to be comedy. So it has to be funny, and that's the challenge, to make such a very divisive, controversial, and also grim topic, obviously abortion, funny. And so that's the main point and the main challenge. But of course, the second challenge is that you want to proselytize, you want to make other people think, and that's the ultimate um, goal, apart from making people laugh, to 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 be socially useful, to do something for this good cause, which is, I mean, what is better and what is a better cause than defending the most defenseless creatures, namely the unborn baby.
And that's what I like. You actually present some in the humor. You present some great counter arguments to arguments that really don't go challenged very often. They become the sort of the status quo, like the whole idea of choice and the sort of this kind of twisted philosophy behind it.
Yeah, you're right. You mentioned history before. I'm a bit of a history buff. I've always liked history. And of course, I'm based in Europe, born in Italy, lived in Germany. Now I am a naturalized British citizen. And of course, history and Second World War is very much present. And nowadays, again, this Hitler label, this Nazi label, um, the elections, Trump or anyone who says anything that the lefties, the Democrats, the liberals don't like, they are automatically Hitler. So these labels, sometimes historic, like Hitler or Nazis, and sometimes other labels like bigot or others, presumably or superficially positive labels like choice, pro-choice, or women's reproductive health, or women's reproductive rights. These euphemisms, they stick in your mind, and they sort of change your subconscious, and ultimately it becomes something automatic. Oh, you don't want immigration? You must be a bigot. You must be a racist. You want to protect the border? Oh, you are against abortion, so you must hate women, right? Even though many women, maybe the majority of women, are pro-life. So my idea, and of course, the challenge of making such an unpalatable topic and conversation funny, and hopefully I've been reasonably successful in doing that, was to go after these labels and to go after these pre-established and very much consolidated ideas and try to dismantle them. And of course, what is the ultimate evil nowadays? Taken for granted, Nazism and Hitler, and it's so automatic. And I start my routine, again, bit of a spoiler, I suppose, but the routine starts with a contrast or comparison between what Nazis did with unwanted people, including unborn babies, and what the so-called Karens do with unborn babies. So I think the way it comes off as funny, and of course the audience has to be the judge, but I could do as much as I could do. The contrast, the sheer contrast between the two forces of evil, but one is recognized as evil because they were getting rid of unborn babies, which would have been defective, which would have been a burden, and they were at war. All right. And here's the funny thing. I say they had their own justifications. What is your justification? You want to keep doing Peloton? So the absurdity, I think, is quite striking, and that's what makes it hopefully funny, and that's what make people hopefully think. Because at the end of the day, satire or political satire is all about pointing out the absurdities, pointing out the the incongruities, right? In stand-up comedy, we all have this concept. We've all heard this concept of punching up and punching down. They say you shouldn't be punching down. You shouldn't go after the poor immigrant who is poor, or the poor Muslim who is oppressed, or the poor woman who is oppressed. You shouldn't go make jokes about it. You should talk truth to the power, and you should stick it to the man, and you should defend the defenseless. So who is the most defenseless creature of all, if not an unborn baby being targeted by his or her own mother, no less?
I'm gonna plug in real quick. Sorry, my battery's dying, but I'll edit this out.
Sure.
So you have had an interesting life. You moved to Iran when you were 10, is that right?
Yeah, 10, 11, early teens.
And then military service, and then came back, went back to Italy,
Correct.
and then went to England.
Yeah, after a year in Germany, yes.
So what does the West, what does that phrase mean to you? What is the West? What does it symbolize?
Um, Good question. Well, the West for me was the ideal to reach because I was born in the West, but I was taken away during my teenage years, the worst possible time, because my father was a career diplomat, and I always struggled a lot to get back in, which I did. And like many pro-Westerners who come from outside the West, I was very much disappointed and dismayed to see and to find a West that no longer has the will or the confidence to defend itself. Physically, as we are watching on the US southern border and European borders at the same time, but also spiritually, in terms of the values. So it's quite disheartening. It's quite alarming, disconcerting to come back and see that everything in the West that I fought so hard to get back to, and presumably we want to, or we are accused of wanting to export to the poor people in the third world, is actually being dismantled step by step. We are under invasion, physical invasion, because the numbers speak for themselves, and moral invasion. We have abandoned Christianity. We have abandoned traditional values. We have abandoned family values for consumerism, for corporatism. See how popular communism and Marxism are at our university. I mean, you don't know where to start. It's just a huge tragedy. And then you have the World Economic Forum telling us to, eat bugs and stop traveling and give up our privacy. They just want to they just want to turn us into atomized, stateless, borderless, faithless, godless, genderless, gender fluid, beige people who just watch Netflix and buy from Amazon because in the words of the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, that makes us easier to control. That's why everything has become a social construct. Identity, whether it's your gender, nations don't have meaning. Imagine there are no countries, as they love the song, right? They don't want God, right? Because they just want to control us. The Great Reset, the net zero, and the Great Replacement, and all that. So that is the West I found, and I I thought I was going to be of help by being a journalist, but then I realized, hey, legacy media is just a lackey of the globalism. So I wasn't feeling good about that. So I thought, maybe I try comedy. I believe this is our last, or at least one of our last trenches to fight, because it's still, although dominated by the left, like pretty much any other sphere of our culture, comedy still gives you some margin to experiment, to push back boundaries, and to raise your voice.
Of course, in America, you have pro-choice and pro-life, right? So it's all about catchy names. So you go to these guys, hey, you are pro-life, right? What's this all about? Yeah, we are pro-life, so we want the baby to live. So you mean the mother dies? No, the mother doesn't die. We are pro-life. The father dies? Nobody dies. We are pro-life, okay? Got it? It seems very reasonable. Thank you. Let me check out these other guys as well. I'll come back to you. But I'm on to you guys. All right. So you guys, you are pro-choice. Whose choice is this? The mother's choice, of course. What about the baby? The baby doesn't get a choice. And the father doesn't get a choice either. All right. Now, this choice you keep bringing up, what is this really? Oh, I'm glad you asked. The choice is that of chopping the limbs of the baby one by one and then suctioning the whole thing out with a vacuuming device. Oh my God! I think, excuse me.
So, what's your prediction for the future of comedy? Best case, worst case.
Well, let's start with the worst case. Worst case is that the long march of the left into the institutions, which was actually theorized by this Italian communist, Antonio Gramsci.
Oh
The
yeah.
street is named after him in Bologna, the Italian city where I graduated, actually. That's the stronghold of the Italian Communist Party, the biggest in the Western world,
Wow.
used to be. Anyway, the long march of the left into our institutions will continue. They have corrupted university campuses, mainstream media, the judiciary, judges, Hollywood, TV commercials, and of course comedy. And their current plan is to bring in tens of millions of outsiders, whether it's through the Mexican border or through the Mediterranean Sea, and then give them an amnesty, and hopefully they will all become uh, voters for the left. Okay, so that's the worst case scenario, that we are doomed beyond redemption. Demographic decline is past its the point of no return, and all that. And the best case scenario, which I hope, of course, is going to happen, is that there is an awakening,
Hmm.
and partly because of new technology. Because if you're talking to me, if Blaze Media, Blaze TV exists, or similar outlets, if people have watched my pro-life routine a million times, it hasn't been through legacy media, because the gatekeepers of the truth, of the news, of the comedy, of the people's voices are no longer the absolute arbiters and gatekeepers. So also with the help of technology, and that's why they are going after these platforms as well, by the way. But through the help of technology, people have become wiser. People are waking up. There are farmers demonstrating and protesting as we speak in Berlin. They did it in the Netherlands. We had the truckers in Canada. We have a traditionalist prime minister in Italy, whom I just quoted. In Germany, the alternative for Deutschland, Germany, is on the rise. In the UK, we had Brexit. In the US, we have Trump hoping to win the presidential election for the third time. So you see what I did there? Uh,
Yeah,
so
you're good, man.
that's
That's
the best case scenario. So people waking up and people telling these globalists, hang on a minute, we love our countries. We are not bigots for not wanting to be demographically replaced, and for holding on to our values and families and our cultural and genetic assets and features, and the civilization, the Western civilization, which gave the world uh, liberalism and liberalism, the noble term, in the noble sense of the term, and lifted tens of millions of people, if not more, out of poverty. And these human rights that they're using against us, who wrote them? White, pale, stale dudes with Christian beliefs. They gave the word human rights, and now they're using them against us.
yeah. There's an interesting inversion of the victim, because Christianity um, treats the true victims. That's why we have hospitals and nurseries, and the first child. Going back to the fourth century, hospitals, child care, institutions that take care of the poor, people who had never been taken care of before. And then there's this sort of co-opted nature to what's going on the left, where it's like the victim is the victims are actually like pretty privileged a lot of times. So when you walk on stage, what's going through your mind? Do you have all this in your mind when you're up there, or is it, you have the routine ready? How much of it is movable?
It's not. It's not much movable for a couple of reasons. First of all, I'm still a relatively new comedian. I started in 2017 roughly, and there was a couple of years because of COVID, and I had my day job. So I'm not a full-time comic because, believe it or not, right-wing conservative Christian comedy does not pay the bills in the metropolitan London, as you can imagine, it wouldn't in Portland or New York or DC. So I'm not as prolific as I want to be, and I'm still what we call an up and coming comedian. So that means the length of the routine is relatively short. It might be 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 minutes. Uh, so you don't have a lot of time. It's not your special show where you can, uh, go off a tangent or improvise or the time is quite strict. And secondly, the sort of venues that allow me to present my material again in this sort of metropolitan London and surrounding territories, I can count them on the fingers of one hand. So when they do give me a platform, I really, really want to do well. So I have to uh, have thought everything, potentially predict if, like any comic would do, I suppose, if some bits don't go so well, can I have a comeback or some damage limitation or say something funny to win the crowd back? And of course, it also depends on the venue. If you go to a so-called mainstream venue, you have less opportunity for experimentation, which is sad, but because the comic or someone who does satire must experiment, must push the boundaries. A joke or a routine has a life cycle. There's an evolution, but of course you get canceled if you say the wrong thing or if the people don't like it. Because that's not the luxury that the left wing or mainstream comics have. They can be not funny. In fact, usually they are not funny. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
I do a couple of pro-life jokes, and the promoter tells me, "Hey, no, somebody complained, and by the way, you were not funny." And I'm like, "I was not supposed to be funny. This is open mic. This is where we come to, to try and test. Nobody's funny. That's why you're not paying us in the first place." You know? So, so I don't have the luxury of the mainstream comic after comic who come and talk about Trump's funny hair and Melania being a gold digger and all this gender pay gap and my struggle against autism and how racist British people are and all that, right? So so I have to do really well, which is stressful but also makes it fun and challenging. Then, if there's a venue, and most of my videos on my channel, which is called Anglo-Italian Comedy, by the way, most of them have been done in one particular venue because this venue decided to, or this comedy endeavor or club called Comedy Unleashed. Uh, this is a monthly event in London, but they also do it now in Leeds in the north of England, and hopefully they will expand. They decided that, our motto is if it's funny, it's funny, and they style themselves as the free thinking comedy club, which should be the, you know, modus operandi of every comedy club, but they're almost so unique that they've become famous for that. So when you go there, it's lovely to know that the promoter and the venue owner have your back. So you feel a bit more freedom, and you still want to do good because you want to repay them for their trust, and you want to get also a good video out of it so that a million people on YouTube watch it, right? So I hope I answered your question somewhat.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask about the club itself because the it's reassuring watching that routine because the crowd really enjoys it too, and you get this impression that the nature of the whole experience is based on, is the routine funny? And it's so interesting to me that we have to that has to be the remarkable exception.
Mhm.
A comedy club where the emphasis is humor. So it's there are like many indications of hope for the future.
Yeah. Again, this this comedy club or comedy night hosted by that club is a reaction to the way or the route stand-up comedy in the UK, but also in the US has taken. If you look at Saturday Night Live, if you look at
Yeah.
the late night shows, if you compare them to 5 years ago, 10 years ago, they have changed beyond recognition. So they have become basically the megaphones of the establishment, whether it's COVID or immigration or Orange Man Bad or feminism, LGBT, you name it. And they've become just echo chambers where people come and repeat the toe the line from the establishment, from our overlords, and everybody pretends, oh, that's so funny, oh, that's so brave, that subversive female comedian, subversive, and you read it in the paper, subversive, because she talked about her lady parts. How subversive? Everyone is doing that. I mean, you you're you're gobsmacked when a female comic goes on stage and doesn't talk about her sexual exploits, you know, or gender pay gap, you know. So or colored comic doesn't talk about, you know, how British colonialists stole everything or were so bad. So where is the subversity in that? Where is the risk in that? Where is the risk in being a gay comic in London or in Portland or in New York? And every second one is a gay or LGBT comic. So the club where I perform mostly, because most others won't host me, Comedy Unleashed, they said, hang on a minute, if it's funny, it's funny, and people are sick and tired of the same stale, hackneyed jokes and talking points. And ironically, you know, as the good old Paul Joseph Watson would put it, uh, conservatism has become the counterculture, has become the new punk rock. Because these so-called rebels, what are they rebelling against? Every talking point, every position has been embraced and vigorously promoted by the government, whether it's the environmentalism, whether it's the feminism, whether it's LGBTQ, open borders, you know. So you have a government, a federal government, who has betrayed Texas like the other border states. Like, they don't open, they don't enforce their own federal laws, their own laws, okay? Because they want open border. Now, where is the courage, right, and bravery in being a comic who sides with the poor immigrant or refugee? Because you are not taking any risk, okay? First of all, you're outright wrong because they are not, most of them are not refugees, they are not genuine refugees, they are not escaping from wars, but that's another story for another day. But you are repeating what we have ev when every street is covered top to bottom with LGBT flags, the way Nazis decorated Nuremberg for the rallies, okay? Where is the rebellion, right? So The punk rock today is the conservative guy or gal who says, hey, maybe we shouldn't kill unborn babies. Hey, maybe we should take care of our borders because that's what defines us. Hey, maybe the West wasn't so bad. Hey, maybe, Jesus was a cool guy, and there's something in Christianity. And when we abandon Christianity, we end up, chopping off penises of our little 5-year-old boys and so on. So so yes, there is a reaction which gives you hope, and if you don't have hope, what have you got?
You are a legend. We'll cut it here, but we need to do this again, and let's talk for like 2 hours because I feel like we just got started.
Oh,
So
thank
this
you.
will be our first. This will be our first conversation. Where can people find you?
Well, I am on my channel on YouTube and Rumble is called Anglo-Italian Comedy, and on Twitter I am Nico_DeSanto. That is NICO_DeSanto. And on Instagram, I'm Nicholas DeSanto. I haven't got a website yet. I need to get that up and running as well.
Nicholas, it has been a pleasure, my friend.
Thanks very much, Kevin. Thanks for having me. Anytime, I'd love to talk to you again.